My grandfather was a chassid. My parents were non-believers, and I was a listener. And the stories my grandfather told me lit up my childhood. I shall never forget those stories. And I will always remember Friday evenings at my grandparents' in Tel Aviv, waiting for my weekly portion of magic. I'd sit by Grandpa Harry waiting for him to bless the wine. He'd run his hands slowly through my hair. I'm a rabbi, you know. I come from Lithuania, you know. You're not a rabbi, are you? Are you from Lithuania? No, Grandpa, I'm from Israel. Well, that probably explains it. Harry, it's my grandmother. We're all waiting. Yes, dear. He'd wink at me and say, we'll have to look into this more deeply another time. Come, the Sabbath Queen is waiting. ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום השישי ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם ויחל אלוקים ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה וישבות ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה ויברך אלוקים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוקים לעשות ברא אלוקים לעשות. So it's Friday night, and we're all here because it's Shabbat, and my grandmother says a family ought to be together on Shabbat. Every Shabbat. At exactly 6 o'clock. And orders are orders. I'm standing near the entrance staring at a frightening photograph of my great-grandfather, Shmuel Bloom, who's staring right back at me, sending chills down my spine. Grandpa Harry walks over, lays his hands on my head and says, be true to your gift. Don't waste time. I was 3 years old that Friday night. Nyabahi bibi, nyabahi bibi, nyabahi bibi, Shabbos. Nyabahi bibi, nyabahi bibi, nyabahi bibi, Shabbos. Gift? What gift? I ran to the living room and asked my dad about my gift, but he just looked at me and said, My mother was busy explaining to my Uncle Leon about her gift for detecting excess in romantic music, and she said, talk to me later, sweetie. So I went back to Grandpa Harry. What do you mean, don't waste time? But he just smiled and said, the journey begins, my little neshama, my little soul. And he lifted me up like a feather into his arms and carried me over to his desk by the window. Shabbos. Grandpa Harry, why do I always have to dress up like this when we come over on Friday night? Well, how else would you dress for a wedding? Who's getting married? We are. What, Grandma and you are getting married? Aren't you already married? Not Grandma and I. All of us. Listen to the words. Come, my beloved. Let us welcome the bride. Let us greet the Sabbath bride. Lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabla, nekabla. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom umevorach. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom umevorach. Well, I don't know about marrying someone I can't even see. Some of the best things in this world can't be seen. Okay. So how come I have to marry her again every Friday night? It's a whole new world every Friday night. Haven't you noticed? I'm surprised at you. You'd better start paying better attention. Now, you must know that every Friday night, 2 angels escort you back home from prayers and watch over you, just to make sure you're being true to your gift and not wasting any time. How do you know that? Well, I know angels. Have you ever seen one? Funny you should ask. Why, just the other day I was sitting on a hill overlooking the sea, surrounded by flowers, purple flowers, when 2 angels dressed in white came walking by, floating on air, just a fist above the flowers. And the angels were carrying with them a bird of amazing colors, like painted fog. This was definitely no ordinary bird. I was curious, so I asked who might this bird be, and they told me on the best of authority that this bird returns once every 7,000 years to speak words that heal the world and make it whole again. So I asked them if I could carry the bird. What did they say? They told me to be here next time the bird returns. But that won't be for another 7,000 years, Grandpa. That's what I said. And they told me if I was going to be impatient about it, we might as well forget it. So what did you do? I told them I'd be there. Wow. I think it's wonderful that you'll help the bird along its way, Saba. My little neshama. We carry the bird not because it needs our help. We carry the bird to show our gratitude. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom. Malachei Hasharet, Shalom. Malachei Elyon, Shalom, Shalom. Mimelech Malchei, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, my mother didn't share my grandfather's view of angels. As a matter of fact, for all their love, my mother and my grandfather never saw much of anything the same way. She was a charismatic ex-communist with the inner peace of a time bomb. She had little sympathy for songs like this one about angels of ministry and peace unto those who come from the King of Kings. Barchuni leshalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Bless me in peace and leave in peace, you who come from the King of Kings, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem leshalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mimelech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Friday evenings, I ate, he'd say, and smile. Well, what's so special about that? Plenty special. If all you had during the week was dry bread, a glass of ambivalent tea, and a piece of herring that looked even hungrier than a Lithuanian chassid at a rich man's banquet after a fast. So how come you ate on Friday nights? Friday nights, I'd go to my teacher's house for Shabbos. How come? Who knows?
He'd get to go because he was an Ilui, a student who had surpassed his teacher's expectations.
My grandmother would yell from the other room.
He was a genius.
I wouldn't listen to a word she says. She's crazy in love with me. I looked at that sweet man who had shown me every day of my life how awed he was by it all, by the fact that I existed, that trees had leaves, that the sun could shine. I looked at him and couldn't for the life of me imagine him ever being that poor.
Poor? I was so poor I couldn't afford my own opinions. I was so poor I had to step out of my room just to change my mind.
And he'd grin like a little child, always a little child.
Now, at my teacher's house, I'd get soup, and I'd get fish, I'd get roasted potatoes and tzimmes, and don't ask. I don't want to make you jealous.
Was he a good teacher, Saba? He looked at me very quietly for a long time, and then he said,
I will tell you the story about the rabbi who promised to wait.
זכור דבר לעבדך על אשר ייחלתני. Friday night. The rabbi invites his favorite student over for the Sabbath dinner. It's an honor like no others. Come, spend the Sabbath with me. I don't have much, but what's mine is yours. And the student comes over. Friday night. And the rabbi lives in a small wooden shack in the middle of the forest, but inside sparkling clean. On the table, a white tablecloth, candles lit, wine in their glasses, challah. And they say the blessing on the wine and the blessing on the bread. And they sit down to eat the soup, and the rabbi says, my son, we're here inside and we're warm, we have plenty to eat, but outside the horses, perhaps they're cold, perhaps they're hungry. Go, check on the horses. Go, don't worry, I promise you, I'll keep the soup warm. And the student steps outside. Night has fallen, the wind is howling through the trees. The horses. Where are the horses? They were just here a minute ago. Kidnapped by the Cossacks. 40 years to serve in the Tsar's army, 40 years a Jew in the Tsar's army. Oh, the first hours are the worst. Then come the days, the weeks, the months. A whole year goes by. What must the rabbi think of his favorite student who stepped outside to check on the horses and never came back again? 5, 10, 15, 20 years go by. 20 years in the Tsar's army. The prayers are getting a little bit dim now. He can hardly remember any of them at all, except for one. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And every once in a while he remembers far away the rabbi waiting. Candles lit. Wine. 25, 30 years go by. 30 years and the Tsar's army is hardly a Jew anymore. The prayers are completely forgotten. The melodies that have accompanied them, forgotten too. And kosher. Who ever heard from kosher in the Tsar's army? You eat what you get. You're lucky if you get anything at all. But sometimes, on cold, lonely nights, he remembers like an echo of a memory. A man. Candles and one night there's a terrible snowstorm in the forest, and the snow covers the ground 6 feet deep. A Cossack lost his way from his battalion. He's crawling through the snow, starving to death. He hasn't eaten for 3 days and 3 nights, scratching the ground, looking for berries, something, anything to eat. And then suddenly he sees a light.
right there, a light. And he crawls towards that light. The entire night he crawls towards that light, and at dawn he reaches it. It's just a small light in a small wooden shack. And he climbs up the steps, and with the last strength he has in him, he cries out, "Food, please, somebody, food." And the door opens, and a man says to him, "Come in, sit down, eat." And the Cossack crawls in, and he looks all around him, and he sees a table with a white tablecloth and candles lit. And he looks up at an old man with a long white beard. And the old man looks down at him and says, "What are you so surprised about? I told you I'd keep the soup warm."
I like that story, Saba. What's it really about?
What any true story is about, my monkey, it's about you.
It's about me? I don't understand.
You will, one day.
I looked at him, but his eyes were suddenly faraway clouds. Will you sing me to sleep, Saba?
Will I sing you to sleep? What a question.
He sat down at the edge of the bed, and even though he had turned all the lights off and the shutters were completely closed, the room was glowing like a silvery cocoon. How do you wish on a moon? How do you go for a walk on a star? How do you reach for a dream that seemed too far? How do you wish on a moon? Where do your wishes come true? Show me the dream you lost in the night. Show me the place in your heart that's filled with light. When will your wishes come true? When the lion, the eagle, and the dove play the games that we used to play, with the angels below and the angels above, and a child will lead the way. A child will lead the way. So hold out your hand with a smile and follow the child with a light in his eyes. And maybe today is the day you realize it's all for the love of a child, and the lion, the eagle, and the dove will return at the end of the day. And the child that leads them with nothing but love has stolen your heart away, stolen your heart away. They'd sleep in separate beds.
Saturday mornings, they'd hold hands and walk into the kitchen together. "What's for breakfast, Heidi dear?"
Harry Davidowitz, you know very well what's for breakfast. It's the same breakfast you've had every Saturday morning for the last 50 years.
"What's that?"
I'm not telling you.
He'd wink at me and grin like a naughty little boy. She loves it when I ask her.
I have a garden, and I have a well. Every Shabbat my lover comes and drinks pure water from my well. יש לי גן ובאר
זכים יש מקדי מידי שבת במחמדי מים זכים יש מקדי.
The hallway leading to my grandparents' bedroom was a time tunnel, covered with photographs from floor to ceiling, reaching all the way back to the very beginning of their love. On a Saturday morning, having slept over, I'd walk down the hallway and I'd see my grandpa in uniform, my 17-year-old grandma with a rose in her hair, my grandparents with the Ben-Gurions, the Weitzmans, riding on camels with Henrietta Sold. You know, I often wondered what made them leave Philadelphia and come to Palestine in 1934 to this sea of sand and dreams. My mother walks in from the living room and stops at a frame hanging a couple of pictures away. I walk over to her. "Which one are you?" She points to a chubby little girl with black curls and a yellowing photograph. "Whose lap are you sitting on?"
Chernyakhovsky.
Chernyakhovsky, the poet?
The great Hellenist poet.
You see, we were just studying him in school. He had written some of my favorite poems. Who's the man dressed in white standing next to Saba?
That's Bialik.
I now see my mother in a whole new light. I mean, Bialik was the national Hebrew poet, a legend. What was he like?
Who? Bialik. A cold fish.
Mother, do you have to be so opinionated about everything?
Yes, he was a nasty, miserable snob and a terrible bigot. He hated dark-skinned Jews, especially Yemenites, and he was nothing like Chernyakhovsky. I loved Chernyakhovsky.
See, my mother was passionate about everything, even religion, which she hated with a passion.
הסבגן נסתזנוב דודי בא עם פרקי סוף דודי חושט מחמדי אין בחצר איש מלבדי דודי חושט מחמדי אין בחצר איש מלבדי.
He was a wonderful poet. But after that morning, I never again saw Bialik quite the same way. "Oh, by the by," said my mother, "after he died, most of his poems were set to Sephardic music, especially Yemenite melodies. Now that's poetic justice for you." Tel Aviv, 1948, the Armon Hotel, noon. The Sabbath is at her peak. The Israeli War of Independence is raging. My mother is working in a military hospital. She's 19, black curls, big brown eyes. My father is a volunteer in the Israeli Air Force. He's a bomber pilot who was recruited by the Haganah while studying poetry in New York at Columbia University. He's a nice Norwegian Lutheran boy. Blonde hair, ice blue eyes, a brilliant mind, and a white silk scarf wrapped around his neck. And my mother walks over to him. "Hi, handsome." My father just stares and says nothing, which is what he usually said if he ever spoke at all. There's a long pause, and then he says, are you going to stare at me like that all day?" "I'll stare at you my whole life if I can help it." "Word is you're a great pilot." My father nods with no trace of humility. "I hear you read all the time, even during takeoffs and landings?" Now my father raises an eyebrow. "What are you drinking?" "It's called beer." "Oh, that's good. I'll have a beer. So, you're American?"
"Norwegian."
"Funny, you sound American."
"Well, I was born and raised there."
"Wouldn't that make you American?"
"Absolutely not. And you, where are you from?"
"Me? I'm Lithuanian."
Never met anyone from Lithuania before. You sound very American.
"Well, I was born and raised there."
Touché.
"Your parents, what do they do?"
My mother is a witch, and my father is an electrical engineer and the Norwegian ski jumping champion. What do your parents do?
My mother is a spy for the Haganah and the theater critic for the Jerusalem Post. and my father is a rabbi and a translator of Shakespeare's works into Hebrew. You win, says my father. Never had a doubt, says my mother, and grins. Every Shabbat, Grandpa Harry would read the entire book of King Solomon's Song of Songs, which I loved because it was filled with words that got my wild heart racing. Words of love and passion and desire. Grandpa Harry said, it's all the dialogue between God and the children of Israel, between the soul and its maker, between Shabbat and its beloved.
אל גינת אגוז ירדתי לראות באיבי הנחל, לראות הפרח הגפן, הנצו הרימונים. I went down to the garden of dangerous beauties to search by the reeds of the river, to see, has truth blossomed on the vines? Have the king's rubies been mined? דודי לי ואני לא הרואה בשושנים. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. הרואה בשושנים. The time for love is here. Come into my garden. Et dodim kala boi legani. Et dodim kala boi legani. Barecha gefen enet zuarimonim. Barecha most beautiful of women. Dodi yarad legano, la rugot habosem. Dodi yarad legano, la rugot habosem. Yonati b'chagvei hasela, yonati b'setera. Yonati b'chagvei hasela, yonati b'setera madrega. Oh my dove, you who are perched in the folds of the rock, concealed in the mystery of the ascent, show me your countenances, let me hear your voice. Oh, 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 ki kol echarev u'barech nave, yonati b'chagvei hasela, yonati b'setera madrega. I stood at the front door and said, "Hi, Grandma. If you think I'm making you lunch, you have another thing coming." "I love you too, Grandma. Where's Saba?" "Napping. What do you want for lunch?" "Nothing." "Good, because that's what I have. Nothing." So I walk into the living room, I put my guitar down next to the couch, and I sit. Skin and bones. Let me fix you something to eat. "So, why are you here? Fight with your parents again?" "Yeah, I guess so." "Well, your father always had a problem with his drinking, you know." "Yeah, well, at least he ignores me. She's so overbearing I can hardly breathe." Try and remember she's still my daughter, please." "Shh." My grandfather's voice came from behind me, soft and sad. "Poi, lasteczka, poi, mama, ich will avoi, nemmer seine grüne Abie verdienen. Poi, lasteczka, poi, be sweet, don't waste time." And he leans his cane on the side of the chair and sits down with a sigh. I wished desperately for tears to fill my eyes so that they could both see how unbearable my life was. But, Harry Davidowitz, what are you doing?
Dancing! And he rolls his sleeves up his arm. Feel them, huh? It's some muscles, huh? You want to see them dance? I come from Cincinnati, oy vey, Cincinnati, where the girls are big and fatty, oy vey. There's some talent, huh? You want to go out for a walk with me?
Yes, Grandpa.
Help me up. You know, there's a very nice couple in the grocery store on Ibn Virol Street. We could show them my stomach muscles if you help me lift my shirt up. Bring your guitar along.
הבולד דושם בן אלים, הבולד דושם כבוד ועוז, הבולד דושם כבוד שמו ישתח, הבולד דושם בהדרת קודש, כל הדושם על המים אל הכבוד, הרים הדושם על מים, על מים, על מים רבים. על מים, על מים, על מים רבים.
That's it. I'm leaving.
What do you mean? He said.
And for the first time ever, he didn't look so joyful. I'm not staying. I'm gonna die if I stay with my parents.
Where will you go? You're only 15.
I'm going to Eilat.
What's in Eilat?
I don't know. Beatniks camp on the beach, the nightclubs. I could sing in the nightclubs.
Is that how you want to use your time? Is that what you want to be doing with your gift?
Yes. At least that way I don't have to stay in the same house with the two of them.
Well, you could stay here, you know.
No, Grandpa. I need to run away.
I understand. I won't tell Grandma. She'll worry too much. She'll miss you something terrible, you know.
I'm running away from them, Saba, not from you. I'll be back, I promise. He turned to leave, tapping his cane on the tiled floor. I stared at the Armenian carpet and tried to count the knots and the fringes, and then he stopped and turned around.
Have I ever told you the story about my teacher and his emaciated horse?
Yes, Grandpa.
He nodded. I thought so.
And he walked out of the room.
כשאלוקים אמר בפעם הראשונה יהי אור, הוא התכוון שלא יהיה לו חשוך, הוא לא חשב באותו רגע על השמיים, אבל העצים כבר החלו מתמלאים במים, וציפורים קיבלו אוויר וגוף. אז נשבה הרוח הראשונה אל עיני אדוננו, והוא ראה אותה במו עיני ענן כבודו וחשב כי טוב. הוא לא חשב באותו רגע על בני האדם לרוב.
When God said, "Let there be light" for the very first time, he only meant for it not to be so dark for himself. He wasn't thinking at that moment about the heavens. He wasn't thinking at that moment about people, way too many people. But they had already begun thinking about themselves without leaves.
כך רק כך יהיה מאושר, אמר בליבו האלוקים הטוב, האלוקים הטוב, אבל הם כבר היו לרוב, האלוקים הטוב. na 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 כך רק כך יהיה מאושר, אמר בליבו האלוקים הטוב, האלוקים הטוב, אבל הם כבר היו לרוב, האלוקים הטוב.
And I was out of there, away from the home that never felt like home, away from school and the daily visits to the principal's office. And I slept on the beach in Eilat, and I hung the Norwegian flag on my tent so that everybody would know who I am and where I'm really from. And I met Tony Fire, the pyromaniac who stuttered poetry, and Steve, the shark-hunting maniac who wanted desperately to be eaten alive under the sea. and Richard the Irish Queen, who wanted to be loved, and Bengt, who played Mozart on his clarinet and wept every evening because he was Danish. And I sang folk songs from my Scandinavian homeland in the nightclubs for the sailors and the tourists and the hookers and the pimps and the pushers.
Flicka från Backafall, Bryggen, tre bröder, kryssar Nelly, Karibiska sjön. Medan en landvind från kusten i söder trycker som sonen den ömma bringhön. Luften är kryddad av tusen chalur, men jag ger botten varendaste en. Måta få vandra bland Backafallsmalmor, allt medan månen går baköver väg.
And I learned how to think like a man and drink like a man and smoke like a man, and those were the days and life sure was grand, wasn't it? So I packed up my grand self and flew back to Tel Aviv, tall and tan, and paid a visit to my grandparents.
See no evil, see no malice, living in my crystal palace. Life is just a melody of pearls. I think tonight I'm gonna fly to Dallas. I'm just a little callous, happy with my limos and my girls. Can't hear a word that you're saying. I can only think about your hips when you're swaying. Don't bother showing me the colors of your complicated soul. It's only rock and roll.
It's my new song, like it. What's with Dallas? You've never been to Dallas? It's just a song, Grandma. Your hair is too long. Cut it. You're such a handsome boy. Why would you want to hide such a face behind all that hair? The girls like it. A lot they know. Go say hi to your grandfather. Isn't he sleeping? Wake him up. He'll want to see you. So I go into the bedroom, and he's lying in bed, curled up on his side like a baby. I sit down next to him. I place my hands on his forehead. He opens one eye, grabs my arm, and squeezes. Hi, monkey. Hi, Saba. How you feeling? Hurts. And he points to his broken hip. Bad?
Have I ever told you the story about my teacher and his emaciated horse?
Yes, Grandpa.
Have you seen your parents?
Not today, Grandpa. I've been real busy with my concerts. And,
Be sweet. Give them a call.
I will, Sab, I promise. He tightens his grip on my arm.
I know they're not who you want them to be. But I, on the other hand, wouldn't even invite King David over for dinner. Knowing him, he'd probably try and steal Grandma away from me.
What's King David have to do with any of this?
Just think, you could have been King David's son, in which case rebelling and running away from home to a beatniks camp in Eilat could have very different consequences. So be happy.
How could you compare my dad to King David?
I'm surprised at you. The son of the beautiful, suffering warrior poet. Heroes don't always come in neat packages, you know. Just ask David.
Tzadik katam arifrach ka'erez balevanon iske shetulim bevet adoshem bechatzrot Elokeinu אבותינו יפיחו.
My grandpa had a real special feeling for my dad. Ever since the night my father came to dinner, it was the Friday evening after my parents met at the Armon Hotel, and Grandpa Harry shakes his hand and grabs him by the arm.
So, you're a poet, you're a pilot, you love watching birds, and you love my daughter.
Yes, sir.
Call me Harry. You met my wife? She's gorgeous, isn't she? Did you know Beniamino Gigli once serenaded her in Philadelphia? You've heard of Gigli?
Sure, he's a great tenor.
Yeah. I prefer U.C. Buerling, but U.C. Buerling never serenaded my wife in Philadelphia. So, you're Dutch.
No, Norwegian.
Funny, you look Dutch.
No, I'm definitely Norwegian.
Good. The Dutch are very boring people. I find most conscientious people are boring. I'm Jewish.
Yes, I know.
You're not.
No, I'm not.
And you're afraid that it bothers me.
The thought has crossed my mind.
Well, it doesn't. Did you know Shakespeare wasn't Jewish? I just finished translating him this week. Chaucer wasn't Jewish either.
Yes, I've heard.
I'm starting on him next week. Isn't that something? I began as a Chassid in Lithuania. I weighed 108 pounds when I came to America, and I was 18 years old at the time. Now look at me. This is some chest. These are some muscles, huh? Let me tell you something that'll give you a kick. I hear we both went to Columbia University. Did you know Hirohito's brother was my roommate in Columbia? He taught me gymnastics. Bet you didn't know that.
No, I didn't. I want to become a Jew.
Why?
Well, what else is there?
Plenty.
Not for me, there isn't.
Well, that's different then. Welcome home.
How like the fruited palm the righteous grow, like cedars rising tall and mighty.
And I'm back on the beach in Eilat again, 1,000,000 miles from home and far from my grandfather's scrutiny, being true to my real gift, wasting time with one of my many new acquaintances. It's a bonus that came with my increasing popularity as a singer. This one is a philosophical burglar with a zeal for interpreting Torah. Shabbat was his day of grace. A righteous person can grow like the date-bearing palm, or like the cedar of Lebanon, tall and mighty and completely out of touch. Truth. And he leans over and feeds his dog a pill. What are you giving the dog? It's just something to bring him down. He took too much acid. We watch a stone chihuahua chase demons in the pebbles, and the Red Sea at our feet, and the mountains at our temples. And I'm sitting on the beach next to a break-in artist who spent more time in jail than I've been alive. And I say, where do you learn this stuff? Burglary? It's a gift. No, the Torah. Oh. Jerusalem. But most of it is divine inspiration, which I received directly through my dog, together with music and lyrics for many songs that afterwards get ripped off by other so-called artists and played on the radio, and I never see a dime from any of it. And I just stare. Danny, get up, it's 2:00.
Huh? Where am I?
Jerusalem.
Who are you?
We came here last night after your concert, you don't remember?
You gotta be kidding. What would be the point of drinking this much if I could still remember anything?
Well, come on, it's time for lunch, no? Services are almost, I'll be back any minute. No, get up. It's Shabbat.
Who cares?
She stops whatever it is she's doing. How old are you? 16. Well, if you don't mind my telling you, you're too nice, too talented, and too young to be drinking this much.
Oh, yeah? Well, don't let my exterior fool you. Inside, I'm real old and rotten and nasty.
And before she can answer, they're back. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Jerusalem's own folk ensemble. 1 Canadian banjo player, 3 singers from England, 2 guitar players, 1 South African, 1 German, a Moroccan percussionist, and the queen of the group, Maddie, an American. Mother Earth's evil twin. The voice of an angel, the soul of a devil. She's a pill-popping, acid-dropping, pot-smoking, beer-guzzling mama from hell. Next to Maddie stands an old man, barrel-chested, square-head, dead eyes. And Maddie says, "Come say hello to Don Yosef." So I swim over. "Don Yosef, this is Danny."
Give me your hand.
So I obey. And he places a fistful of raisins and almonds in my hand, slaps my face, and says,
Shabbat Shalom. It's a great honor.
whispers the Moroccan percussionist. Why?
Because he's Don Yosef. He once killed a donkey with his head.
The seeds for my future vegetarianism are sown at this moment. We say the blessing on the wine and the bread, and we make it through a meal that would have been amazing had I not been so hungover. After grace, Don Yosef is led over to an armchair by the piano, and he sits down with great solemnity.
Today, I will sing for you a happy song, a traditional Jewish song, not like the garbage you sing in the nightclubs every night.
And everybody laughs, remembering the donkey. Maddie brings over a bottle of arak in a glass, and she puts it down next to Don Yosef.
La vida do por el raki. I live for arak. Salut, lechaim tovim.
La vida do por el raki, no puedo yo dejarlo, de perderlo no me arretí de tanto amarlo, de perderlo no me arretí de tanto amarlo. Cuando está en el marí, él no habla del todo. Cuando me ado yo candí, hago baños de lodo. La vida do por el raki me muero. De perderlo no me arretí de tanto amarlo. De perderlo no me arretí de tanto amarlo.
Back home, my mother tells me my grandfather has been sick for a week. I run to the hospital. I walk into the room, and he's sitting up in bed reading. "Hi, Saba." His face lights up like a newborn baby.
Hi, monkey.
During World War I, while serving as a chaplain with the American Army, and he'd inhaled poison gas in the French front, and now he developed throat cancer. He signals me to come over, and he grabs my arm. His hand is as strong as ever.
Tonight, will you say the Kiddush instead of me?
Yes, Saba. No one has ever said the Kiddush in my grandfather's house before except for him.
Do you still remember it?
Yes, Saba.
Let me hear.
I lean over. And he beams and kisses my forehead.
You're a sweet boy. You always were a sweet boy.
O Lord my God, thou art very great. Thou art clothed with honor and majesty, and coverest thyself with light as with a garment, and stretchest out the heavens like a curtain.
Unlike all sweet boys in Israel, I went to the army when I was 18, and I learned 3 things: that sweet boys die fast, that there's no feeling in the world like holding a fully loaded semi-automatic submachine gun while you're kicking down a door, and that I hated myself for feeling that way. O Lord my God, thou art very great, with a light as with a garment, who stretchest out the heavens like a curtain. Thou art clothed with honor and majesty. O Lord my God, thou art very great. The last time I saw my grandfather, he was sitting in an armchair in the hospice. And my grandmother said, "He's been giving the nurses a hard time." And I leaned over and I whispered, "Hi, Saba. I want you to try real hard and be good for me, okay?" And he squeezed my hand twice. And my grandmother stroked his cheeks and she said, "His skin is still soft like a baby, isn't it, Danny? He always had such soft skin." And I said, "Yes, Grandma." But it was hard to talk, so I left. Oh Lord, my God, thou art very great. Thou art clothed with honor and majesty. Who coverest thyself with a light as with a garment, who stretchest out the heavens like a curtain, like a curtain, like a curtain, like a curtain. 3 meals are served during the Shabbat. The first one on Friday evening to welcome her, the second one on Saturday noon to sustain her, and the third one late on Saturday afternoon to postpone her inevitable departure. During the Suda Shlishit, the third meal, we try very hard to stretch time beyond its natural limits, to give the suffering souls of this world a little rest, and to keep the one we love most close to us for just another breath. Kodesh, Kodesh, holy, holy, Mikelokei Elyon. It's amazing what the absence of one person can do, you know? I mean, you'd think the world goes on, but that's not completely true. Something about the world does change. And when my grandfather died, a whole lot of my world changed, and not for the better. I went back to my grandmother's house for Shabbat a few times, but the light was gone. And Friday night just became the night that follows Thursday. After a while, I stopped coming, and pretty soon I forgot Shabbat altogether. It was as if I had stepped outside to check on the horses and never came back again. "When are you coming home?" my mother asked. I was calling her from California. "I'm not. I quit. I'm going to hang around here and meet people who don't know me, who've never seen me before on TV and couldn't care less." "Don't be silly. What about your career? You can't just walk away from everything just like that. What would Saba say?" "As soon as I find out, I'll let you know." But I never got a chance to, because she died pretty soon after that. And my father crawled into his bottle with his broken heart and drank away his gift. and I drifted as far away from whatever it was I was trying to run away from until I forgot I was running. And life was good for a while. And it was on one of those good days in my exile in the West. I had a girlfriend who wanted to convert. Apparently, she wasn't Jewish. I told her I didn't think she really wanted to do that, but she insisted, so I said, fine, I'll take you to a rabbi. I had a friend who knew about such things, so we found the most ultra-Orthodox rabbi in town. Turned out he was a Hasidic Rebbe. I figured, hey, this will put the idea out of her mind for good. So Friday noon, we go over to visit the Rebbe. In a large room, barely lit, sat a young man behind a large table, and next to him, the Rebbe. Small, skinny, scraggly beard, black clothes. This was better than I'd hoped for. And then he looked up, and from across the room his eyes hit me. And I knew he knew. "Why did you come here?" he asked. My girlfriend shuddered and mumbled something incoherent about being spiritual and loving all creatures. And then he turned his lethal eyes on her. "Tell me why you hate us so much."
כן, בקודש חזיתיך לראות עוזך וכבודך.
"You'll stay for Shabbos," he said, and he left the room. And there was evening, and there was morning, and now it's Saturday afternoon, and we're sitting round a giant table surrounded by his Hasidim. There's a lot of eating and singing. Now everybody quiets down, and they're all looking at the Rebbe who's sitting there at the head of the table, eyes closed, dead to the world.
צמא, 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 צמא לך נפשי, כמה וכמה וכמה, כמה, כמה לך בשרי.
Someone says very softly, "Rebbe, give us a dvar. Give us a word." For a short while there was total silence, and then he opened his eyes. "My grandfather of blessed memory slept 2 hours a night. He'd get up in the morning like a lion and do God's work. My father of blessed memory would sleep 4 hours a night. He'd wake up like a child and do God's will. And I, if I don't get my 6 hours of sleep at night, I'm not a human being in the morning. And I don't understand. What is it that I have done to deserve such a fate? To be wasting God's time so shamelessly?"
כן, בקודש חזיתיך לראות עוזך וכבודך. כן, בקודש חזיתיך לראות עוזך וכבודך. צמא וצמא וצמא צמא, צמא לך נפשי, כמה וכמה וכמה, כמה, כמה לך בשרי.
I stayed for a while by the Rebbe. "Danny, I've had Samson on my mind all morning." And he'd grab me by my arm and out we'd go. We'd talk about the devotion of Samson and the destiny of souls. We looked like the odd couple from Minsk. Me with my boots and my jeans and my long, long hair, and him with his black hat, black coat, black pants, black shoes, and beard. But after that, they found a very old, very drunk, naked man with no name in in a trashed apartment in an ugly building somewhere not far from Tel Aviv. And the man with no name had been dead for quite a while, which made it hard for them to find out who he was and where to put him. But after 3 days and 3 nights, they figured out who the bum was, and they called me up and said, "Your daddy's dead." So I went north to Minnesota, the land of many lakes where many Scandinavians live, thinking maybe this way I'd get closer to my father and his roots. But too much time had been wasted, and he remained as far and untouchable for me as he'd ever been. So I opened up the yellow pages, and I looked under Zen. "What do you want?" said the little bald Japanese man in brown on black and white. "I want to be your student. I want you to tell me what you know."
I have nothing to say.
And he bowed with a smile I'd seen somewhere before. "What's it like, this Zen?"
It's very boring. It's very quiet. It's very silly practice.
And he laughed his head off like a little child. "So, can I come back tomorrow?"
Tomorrow is a very good day.
And he bowed and left the room without a trace. I came back the next day and I stayed for 14 years. I spoke to my teacher 5 times in 14 years. The second time I said, "Do you miss home?"
Yes, but I didn't run away from mine, so it's different.
The third time I spoke to my teacher, I said, "Roshi, something funny has been happening lately. I've been reading all these sacred Jewish books for some reason, and they're amazing."
What's so funny? Truth is truth.
The last time I spoke to my teacher, I ran up to his room and I told him something, and he listened and asked some questions. And then he smiled a smile I'd seen somewhere before and said,
That's pretty good.
And I grinned. "What now?"
Well, now for you is very good time to go home. Don't you think?
"What do I do when I'm home?"
Well, anyway, when you're hungry, please eat. Take care of daily living. Don't waste time.
ותהר ליבנו לעובדך באמת, לעובדך, לעובדך באמת. ותהר ליבנו לעובדך באמת, לעובדך, לעובדך באמת. ותהר ליבנו לעובדך באמת, לעובדך, לעובדך באמת. ותהר ליבנו לעובדך, 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 לעובדך באמת. ותהר ליבנו לעובדך באמת, לעובדך, לעובדך באמת. ותהר ליבנו לעובדך באמת, לעובדך, לעובדך באמת. ותהר ליבנו לעובדך באמת, לעובדך, לעובדך באמת. ותהר ליבנו לעובדך, 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 לעובדך יהודך באמת.
So I went home. And then one summer night, we were all sitting in a big circle on the floor of a circular room, and in the middle of the circle was a group of people sitting in a circle, holding wine goblets and braided candles and spice boxes, and we were all singing, ooh, ooh. What is this? I asked. It's Havdalah, he said, with a smile I'd seen somewhere before. It's the ceremony of separation between Shabbat and the rest of the week, between the holy and the mundane. Ooh, ooh. I think to myself, this room looks just like the room they found my father in, except someone had cleaned it up and it was fragrant and glowing now, and Grandpa Harry was sitting at his desk by the window, and my father was lying on a quilt. And I walked over and I looked at my father, and Grandpa Harry said, "Be sweet." And I leaned over and I kissed my father and I said, "It's okay now." And Grandpa Harry said, "Tell him. I love you, Daddy. I don't think I ever loved you this much my whole life." And Grandpa Harry smiled. "Welcome home." Who cleaned the room? You did. Me? Sure. Didn't you notice? I'm surprised at you. What did you think this ceremony was all about? And I looked down at my father, but he was gone, and braided candles were burning where he once lay. And I looked over to the window, but the desk had vanished, and so had Grandpa Harry. And someone said very softly, "Mommy, what is Daddy staring at like that?" And I turned to my wife, who was sitting there, looking at me as though she'd never seen me before. And I looked at my boys, who suddenly looked so familiar. And I said, "It's Grandpa Harry. I'm just staring at Grandpa Harry in your eyes." Bum bum ya ba bum bum ya ba bum bum ya ba bum bum yum bum bum ya ba bum bum Shavua tov guten Tag yum bum bum ya ba bum bum ya ba bum bum ya ba bum bum yum bum bum ya ba bum bum a guten Tag yum bum bum yum bum bum ya ba 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 bum ba bum yum bum bum ya ba bum bum Shavua tov guten Tag yum bum bum ya ba 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 bum ba bum yum bum ya ba bum bum Shavua tov
a guten Woch. Ja ba 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 ba, ja ba bam, ja ba 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 bam ba bam, yam bam bam, ja ba bam bam, Shavua Tov, a guten Woch. Ja ba 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 bam ba bam, ja ba 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 bam ba bam, yam bam bam, ja ba bam bam, Shavua Tov, a guten Woch.
My grandfather was a chassid. My parents were non-believers, and I was a listener. And the stories my grandfather told me pierced my heart. I will never forget those stories. And I will always remember the Friday evening my grandfather lay his hands on my head and said, "Be true to your gift. Don't waste time."
המבדיל בין קודש לכל חטאותינו ועם זרענו בכספנו ירבה כחול וככוכבים בלילה לכבודכם דת לבבי אליהו הנביא לכבודכם דת לבבי אליהו Annabi Havena, Eliau, por nuestras casas venga, boir tomrichbo, nabashvikibo, lo shavatibo, gam lo rashena, Eliau, Annabi Havena, Eliau, por nuestras casas venga.